So I went on a road trip and bought a lot of books, and so we need to talk about it. Hello everybody! I just got back from a long, wonderful road trip that spanned over 5,000 miles, went from my hometown in Rochester, Minnesota, all the way to the coast in Seattle, and then Olympic National Park, and then down the western coast to Portland, and then eventually to Northern California, and then Lake Tahoe, and then I drove all the way back through Salt Lake City and a couple other places back to Rochester. It was long, it was great. I love road trips, got a lot of good reading done. But also, my wife and I have this tradition where when we go to a new city, we try to do a bookstore tour. So not only is this going to be a book haul, I'm going to talk to you about some of the bookstores that I went to, particularly in Portland, because we spent a whole day doing a bookstore tour. And I want to particularly talk about a couple that I went to that are great. And then on the way back, we didn't do a full bookstore tour, but we did stop at a couple bookstores in Salt Lake City that I want to talk about. So this will be like a hybrid bookstore tour recommendation, book haul, kind of Frankenstein's monster of a video that I hope you like. Also, before I get to those books, I want to emphasize bookshop.org. If you don't use that to buy your books and use Amazon, please stop. Bookshop.org, you can basically find anything that you could find on Amazon, including fantasy books, pre-ordering books. I just pre-ordered No Life Forsaken by Steven Erikson on bookshop.org. And the great thing that bookshop.org does is that you can select a local indie bookstore, and part of the profits from that book sale goes to the indie bookstore. It is a great resource. As a bookstore owner myself, I can say it is legitimate. They do give that money to local bookstores, and it accounts for like a sizable part of our budget every year. So if you aren't doing that for your local indie bookstore, you can do it for Garden Party Books, which is the bookstore I use, but I would recommend you to do one in your hometown, especially a bookstore you really, really like. And even when you're buying new books, not from that bookstore, it will get some money for that bookstore. So please use bookshop.org. I don't have an affiliate link at all because I just want you to use it, and you should use it for the bookstore of your choice. So let's talk about Portland bookstores. Now, the number one most famous bookshop is Powell's, of course, in downtown Portland. It is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, independent bookstore in the world, and certainly in the United States. It was excellent. I will talk about that in a moment, because before then, I want to talk about a much smaller bookstore, but might be my favorite bookstore in the country, and that is, drumroll, boom, Parallel Worlds, which is a specific sci-fi and fantasy bookstore in Portland, and it was wonderful. Loved it so much. Normally, genre bookstores, at least in my experience, I went now to a couple of genre bookstores that were great, are, just generally like not organized very well, or limited selection, or they're kind of like gimmicky. And this was anything but. Parallel Worlds was fantastic. It had all the greats that you would expect to have there, and they had their own sections, like Robin Hobb, Steven Erikson. Like, every store is going to have a Brandon Sanderson section, and this one did, which is good. But I know that they know fantasy if they have folks like Robin Hobb have their own section, new and used books. If I know that there's a really beloved like Robert Jordan section that divides things based on the different editions that we have. When there's artwork of like Octavia E. Butler, or you can buy an Ursula K. Le Guin poster, like those are things you know that this is a real like lover of the genre. And just for me personally, there's a lot of Malazan representation there that was so exciting. And like all good bookstores, in my opinion, it was a good mix of used like deals that you could hunt for and find, and new books. And especially in the fantasy genre, there's like a love of old sci-fi fantasy. In fact, there was a whole section that was just like cool covers, which is like great. I love it. And I did actually buy quite a lot of books. First off, they had some boxes out front that just had kind of miscellaneous. If you buy 3, you get them each for $1. And in that bag, I got lucky and found one book that it was just like a revelation, which is City of Dragons. This is the one book in the edition that I have them in that I don't have in the Rain Wilds Chronicles, which is part of the larger Realm of the Elderlings system series. And this is the one I didn't have. And I'm going to reread Realm of the Elderlings not every year, but I'm going to be rereading them probably till I die. So I want to have them. and I'm only missing 2 of them. One is City of Dragons, which I got for $1, which is awesome. The other one is, unfortunately, Ship of Magic, which is one of my favorites. Or is it Magic? Yep. Ship of Magic, and I need it in kind of the old 80s cover. I need to complete the set, but so glad to have this, again, for $1. And then I found 2 kind of fun books in, when you're sifting through these. One is Isaac Asimov's Second Foundation. I've not read in Foundation. I know Asimov, lots of people like him. I've not read this series. I don't even know if this is like one of the bad spinoffs or one of the main ones, but I figured it's for $1. Worst case scenario, I can give it away to somebody. And I love these old, like classic 70s, 80s fantasy with beautiful covers. And I found this, The White Heart by Nancy Springer. I don't know much about it, but I had heard about this book. I don't know when, I don't know where, don't know how, but I was like, this is a beautiful edition. I love this art style, a little more than 200 pages, so like a real easy read. And I'll have this at some point, and I love the book, so I picked that up. Inside, I got several new books. Again, I just kind of fell in love with this store, and I bought artwork and a whole bunch of other stuff. So there was a Terry Pratchett We Free Men, which would be interesting. I kind of want to read Terry Pratchett outside of the Discworld world at some point. I'm still reading a lot of Discworld currently, but this looked great. And again, I love this sort of silly throwback art style that you don't really see anymore. And then Stone of Farewell in one of my favorite editions, again, sort of a classic 90s edition, which is the second book in Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. This is my favorite cover, though. And I probably will not reread Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. Maybe I will like once in my life. I'm not like planning on it. But I'm learning about myself and books that I have on my shelf. It's not always about straight utility in the sense of like, I'm going to read that book one day. The joy of seeing it on my shelf and remembering when I did read it is also a big part for me of reading books and my bookshelf. And that's what this is. I had a lot of these books and then I sold them because I was like, I don't think I'm going to read Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn again, even though I really liked it. But my thoughts have changed where I just like to have reminders of it. So this is just there to remind me of the good times I had with this series. And because, who knows, maybe I'll read it again because I'm very interested in reading the Ostenard sequel trilogy, which is The Last King of Ostenard. And funny enough, they had the second book in hardback, their Empire of Grass. I have the first one, which would Crown, already ready to be read. And so now I have the second one, which also kind of light a fire under me to actually get to the series and read it because I love Tad Williams. And this is like obviously a late work of his. I mean, he's not dead. But I mean, it's 30 years after the original one, and I liked the original one, so it'd be very interesting to see how his writing has changed or why he felt the need to come back to this world after all this time. I'm really excited for that. And again, Parallel Worlds was so great. I got to talk to the owner's wife, was actually manning the counter, which was fun. We bonded because at our bookstore, my wife Anna is the one who's normally there, and most people know, and so I'm used to being the spouse that's there. That's not like the main person who's there all the time. So we bonded over that. Seems like a great store. If you're anywhere near Portland or if you're going to Portland, please, please, please go to Parallel Worlds. Or if you're in Portland, make sure that you have Parallel Worlds on your bookshop.org money because it's just great. Cannot recommend it highly enough. Now let's talk about the main bookstore that most people know about in downtown Portland, which is Powell's Bookstore, and it lived up to the hype for me. This is such a cool store, not just because of its size, although it does have a massive, like, literal square footage footprint, and everything's divided into like huge genre areas: sci-fi, fantasy, mystery, fiction, historical nonfiction. There's just so much cool stuff. And again, it is littered with both used and new books. And actually, I really appreciate that they have organized their places so that the new and the used are in the same place, and both are organized well. So like if you go to look for Abercrombie, you can go to, A, B in the fantasy section, and you see all they have. Mostly new because people seem not to donate or want to sell Abercrombie, but some also other stuff. Like it was very easy to find what you were looking for, and also a whole bunch of fun ways to find new books. They have great themed areas. There's also a cafe that sold food as well. There's a cool I guess they're technically used, rare book section that I didn't go to because you had to wait because only a certain amount of people could go in there, which again shows how much love and care they have for their spaces. But it's great. Powell's is so good. I got a t-shirt. Should have worn my t-shirt for this video. What am I doing? And the books. I did get 3 books there. All of them were used. All of them were things that are kind of always on my list. The first one is The Stand by Stephen King. I have been steadily getting into Stephen King the last couple of years. First, by reading Pet Sematary, which was tremendous. I wasn't expecting to like how scared that made me, but also with a really strong theme. And like Stephen King obviously has like a really well-defined voice and great writer. And then I read The Shining. Then I read Dr. Sleep, the follow-up to Shining. And then I read the first book, The Gunslinger, in the, is it just called Gunslinger? The Gunslinger series? Boy, I should know. Anyway, on a lot of lists, like I looked up like what Stephen King fans people want, or like what are good Stephen King reads. Obviously, there's a lot of opinions out there, but The Stand is kind of consistently in that top 5. It is a big chonker of a book, but again, there's a theme here. I love these kind of old school covers rather than like the very clean new covers. And so got The Stand. I'm excited. If you are a Stephen King fan, maybe tell me what you think of The Stand, and especially if I should continue to kind of do what I'm thinking of doing, which is reading more Stephen King standalone horror before his Dark Tower, that's what it's called, Dark Tower series. I have all the Dark Tower series. For some reason, it feels like a huge commitment, which is somewhat silly. I got this huge Stephen King section. I like Stephen King. I like fantasy. And I know it's kind of subversive, almost postmodern. So why I'm not getting into this, I don't know. So encourage me to do that, or maybe I should just read The Stand. I need to know. The other two, I think people are going to be less interested in, but these are 2 volumes from Robert Caro's current 4-volume work on Lyndon B. Johnson. Robert Caro is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, nonfiction writers. He wrote a book that I read recently called The Power Broker, very big, which might be the best nonfiction work I've ever read. He's a tremendous writer, a incredible researcher, and just brings history to life, and especially showing how things like class and power come into play in history and the little quirks of personality and how that works. It's great. I love Robert Caro, so I really want to read this whole series, which I will one day, and these are really hard to get because no one sells them once they have them. So I've got them now, and they're mine, and I'll never sell them, which I'm very excited about. There are a lot of other cool bookstores we went to in Portland, including Belmont Books, but I'm going to, for the sake of this video not being 8,000 minutes long, going to fast forward to another great genre store that we stopped at on our trip through Salt Lake City, and that is the Legendarium Sci-Fi Fantasy Bookstore in Salt Lake City. First off, it was just so cool. I mean, this is, I'm sure, untrue to the area, but I don't know Utah very well. I don't know Salt Lake City very well. And sort of the stereotype, which probably isn't true, is that like there's a lot of Mormons there and a lot of like conservative religious thinking, which there may be, may not. If you're from Salt Lake City or Utah, let me know if that's the case. I grew up in Southern California where there are a lot of Mormons, and generally those folks are more broadly conservative and religious, which usually means they're not very accepting of the LGBTQ community. That's why I'm saying this, because Legendarium is very purposefully pro-LGBTQ plus community, very inclusive, and I just loved being out and loud about this in a place, at least stereotypically, that it might be harder to be. Again, I don't know if that's true. I'm not from Salt Lake City, but that's just my perspective as an outsider. And the store was great. One critique I would have of Legendarium is it seems like they didn't have a lot of sort of the big hitters. Like I said, Parallel Worlds has like the Steven Ericksons, the Robin Hobbs, the Abercrombies, like those were in stock. For some reason at the Legendarium, despite it being bigger than Parallel Worlds, there wasn't a lot of those. My guess is maybe it's because they just sell a lot of sci-fi fantasy and it's maybe harder to keep those folks in stock. That's kind of, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt on that, because I wanted a couple Ian Esselmont books that I couldn't find there, and I wanted an Abercrombie book because I was going to be reading Age of Madness, and they have none of the Age of Madness. So in one case that's a critique, but also in another sense I'm glad they're doing well, and that's probably why. They also didn't have any Robin Hobb, which shocked me. Again, because I was trying to find my missing Ship of Magic book. But I did have a great conversation with the person who was working there. There's also a cool coffee shop that had like lattes based on sci-fi fantasy, which was wonderful. I had a great recommendation and went with a new book that I knew I will probably read because so many people are talking about it, and that is The Will of the Many by James Islington. I haven't read any James Islington, not The Shadow of What Was Lost series. I've heard some love, some mixed responses to that, and it's just never been quite on my radar to actually be like something I need to really like get to. But there's been such a emphasis on this on BookTube and Book Talk and the internet recently, and some very interesting stuff in here, very reflective of the Roman Empire. I'm trying to find out as little as possible, But I want to be in the zeitgeist. So I picked up Will of the Many. Also, I really wanted to buy something Legendarium, and the other stuff on my list wasn't there. So this is what I got. Very happy with that bookstore. And if you're in Salt Lake City, check them out for sure. Now, just some regular haul stuff that I've gotten either at the bookstore or bought myself for my reading. This great, pretty well intact original Great Hunt edition came through the bookstore. And see, aforementioned what I said is I don't think I'm ever going to reread Wheel of Time because it's so big. And while I enjoyed it, it's not like my favorite all time. But I like seeing things on my shelf to remind me of this series that I enjoyed in the times I had with it. So The Great Hunt is probably my favorite like single work. It's before things get too spread out. It is a little frustrating that Rand isn't in it as much, but I will have this on my bookshelf and remember Wheel of Time, and that will make me happy. I think the only other books that I would be like, I want to have that in my collection, but only if it like happens naturally, would be Dragon Reborn and Shadow Rising. Those kind of 2, 3, 4 is sort of the sweet spot for me, where I think that the series is so good before sort of the ending when Brandon Sanderson takes over and does a good job of like bringing together way too many threads that Jordan had going. Anyway, this is not a Wheel of Time talk, but I'm happy I have this and I'll have it on the bookshelf. This was just an amazing thing. Someone donated to the bookstore and I snagged it before we put it in our area. This beautiful version hardcover of Terry Pratchett's Lords and Ladies, which is a Discworld novel. I don't know what part of the Discworld, like what side arc it's a part of. But, I mean, this jacket illustration, which is by Josh Kirby? Interesting. It's just so beautiful. I thought it's a Jack Kirby. That's why I reacted with that. I don't know who Josh Kirby is. We just don't see these very, very much. Like, this is kind of a fun throwback. So, this is a great find. I'm reading through Discworld right now. Slam dunk. Beautiful, beautiful book. Happy to have gotten it. As you all know, or maybe you don't, but I'm reading through a biography of every U.S. president during this current president's time in office. And this is one that came through the store that is a soft cover of David McCullough's Truman on, you guessed it, Harry Truman. I do have, I didn't realize this when I bought it, but a slightly larger one. And so I kind of have to decide, do I want the sort of slightly smaller one or the big one? This is like so little, I don't know what, but this just seems so unwieldy, but this is heavier. We'll have to see where I land on that. To end this section, we have some Malazim books. First off, I already put it on the shelf because I was annoyed that my collection wasn't together, but House of Chains, in some move along the way, I lost my House of Chains, which is a bummer because I lost all of my like notes and everything in it, but also means I get a new edition that I can do that with again. So got my House of Chains. I am eventually going to start rereading. I've reread up to Memories of Ice, and I want to jump in again. There's a couple of books that I haven't actually posted reviews for, like long spoiler reviews, because just how things worked out in my reading of the series initially. And so I want to go back and do that, and House of the Chains is the first one to do that, so I will be doing that soon. House of Chains, so good. The other two are Eslamont books as I continue to go through the Eslamont novels of the Malazan Empire. The first is the first book in the Path to Ascendancy series. I don't want to say too much about what's that about because it's kind of a small spoiler, not really, of the Book of the Fallen. But I'm excited to get to this. This is a very interesting... I bought this new, and it's like very plasticky. I don't know if you can see that, and sort of... It doesn't match my other Path to Ascendancy books. Just like, it seems weird how mismatched these are in the same series as the first one, and this is the second one in the series. Even like, I don't know if you can see, probably like you can see a sheen on this book, and this one doesn't really have a sheen. It's more matte. I don't understand that. That might bug me a little bit, but not enough to return it. Even like the spine is a little different. They're slightly different widths. Just kind of weird. They're both by Tor, so I don't understand. Anyway, that's not important. Dancer's Lament, Path to Ascendancy. I'm going to get there once I finish the novels of the Malazan Empire. The other Eslamont book I got is Forge of the High Mage, which is the newest book that just came out. Is it in 23? Yep, in 23. This is a novel of the Malazan Empire, a tale of the paths of ascendancy. There's sort of a shift in that series ongoing. I don't know exactly what it is, but I have some suspicions of why that has changed, but that is also what I got. So this is my book haul, road trip, bookstore tour thing. If you have thoughts on any of my purchases, let me know, especially if you've been to those bookstores, particularly Parallel Worlds in Portland and the Legendarium in Salt Lake City, our fantasy sci-fi genre bookstores. You should definitely visit if you're ever in those areas. First in, last out.